wide out.
Less veg and more malleable. They have concrete or something too.
And so there's a lot that we'll need to work through with that.
Cool.
Figure out. I did verify that we have a just over 80-foot right-of-way on their property.
Okay.
80 foot going down the ridgeway, all the way down. And then North Navajo is 74. They're at the school.
Center.
It's a 70. It's a 30 on the school side and 44 on the other side. So we got 74. So we've got 74 foot right of way there, and on the school side, it's right to the right of way, back to sidewalk. On the other side, there's about 10 feet of expansion.
A little realignment or something.
Yeah, be able to make something happen there. Work better for that school drop off.
I think it's 6:30. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is September 11th, 2019. I call this regular city council meeting together at 6:30. Since it is September 11th, I have a little speech here. Good evening. Thanks for having you guys. Thanks for coming tonight. War came to America on September 11th, 2001, with an attack on New York and Washington, D.C. Not since the Civil War Battle of Antietam has so many Americans perished in a day. 2,983 men, women, and children died that day, including 343 firefighters and 71 law enforcement. On March 19, 2003, the U.S. invaded Iraq to overthrow Saddam Hussein. Then, in that war on terror, on September 6, 2004, Lance Corporal Keith Quinn Keith, Lance Corporal, United States Marine that graduated from Page High School, was killed in a car bomb attack in Fallujah, Iraq. Troops continue to fight there today and battle the Taliban. All told, somewhere between 480,000 to 500,000 have died since September 11th attack. And as with this, I ask for a moment of silence in remembrance of September 11th, and that we never forget freedom is not free. So if you'll join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. If you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lance Corporal Keith's family is here today. Would you please stand so we can thank you. We can all thank you for his service and his sacrifice for our country. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mayor Tappan.
Here.
Vice Mayor Kojin.
Here.
Councilor Davis. Here. Councilor Yank.
Present.
Councilor Lee. Here. Councilor Cormier.
I'm here.
Councilor Warner.
Here.
Our priority list, discussion and possible action by City Council pertaining to City Council's strategic priorities. Any discussion? I would like to bring up in our strategic priorities for the council, we have its own heading, housing. Housing is on there, and under that it has, housing is a critical component of a vibrant city, is an array of housing options. The city struggles with the lack of affordable and workforce housing, including ownership and rental options. So one of the goals of the city is to pursue affordable housing and workforce housing to expand housing options for low and middle income households. That's one of the council's priorities. Also in the community, our community strategic planning retreat for 2019. For the basic data of our community was noted that there's not enough affordable housing, housing costs are too high, there's not enough housing. Our current challenge is that there's no housing. So the vision that was created was to create more diversified housing through partnerships, increase housing stock, and 200 new home units, workforce housing and professional housing. And part of our challenge to growth is housing is a route to moving Page forward. And lastly, as part of our strategic workshop, to increase those housing options, we want to leverage land for residential development, small unit affordability housing, and increase incentives to build rental housing. So these are all part of our strategic plan that we had. Moving on to council's individual priorities. Is there anyone that would like to talk about council's individual priorities?
I have a priority that I feel that at this point in time we're in danger of losing our balloon regatta. The infighting that has been going on has sapped the strength out of our regatta association, and they're volunteers and they are not being respected for what they do. Feel that they are on the way out. They are begging for help from this council. And I think that we should put it on the agenda to do something about it for the next council meeting.
Next general meeting? I agree. I think this is a signature city event and we need to take it back under the city's auspice. I also have my personal priorities. Number one on economic development is housing for Page. And then I just wanted to make one other note to council. As I was looking through our priorities today, there's a couple new council members that don't have their priorities in the packet. So if you guys want to write yours up so we can, the city manager, and we can use those to work to help you accomplish your personal and the council's strategic priorities. So if we can get those in. That's all I had. Anyone else have anything on priority list? Okay, we're going to move on to the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. You're still there, Mark?
Yes, I am.
Where's the speaker at? Over there. Consent agenda. The consent agenda is a means to expedite routine matters that must be acted on by council. All items must be done in one undebatable motion passed unanimously.
I move to approve the consent portion of the agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item 8, public hearing. So we, yep. With council's consent, I would like to move an announcement forward before we get into the hearing process. So we have the Page High School Student Council here, and he wants to present what they're doing for homecoming.
I'm Jordan Varner with I'm the student body treasurer for Page High School Students Council, and we have a few things to talk about, or actually just one main thing. We're doing a couple things a little bit different this year with our homecoming week, and the big thing is we're doing our 2019 homecoming tailgate party on a different day. In the past, we've combined it with our bonfire and done it Thursday night, sorry. And this year we are moving it in between the parade and the homecoming game. And it's going to take place in the Page High School courtyard, and we really want community involvement in this. It's going to be a big community event with food, games, inflatables, and so it's a big change from what we used to do, and it's going to be a big community event. So just like to inform you about that.
Is that something you'd need volunteers and donations for?
So they're
Yes.
looking for,
Yeah.
so they're looking for volunteers, if anyone, so it's the fair's from 4 to 6, is that right?
Yep, 4 to 6 on that Friday.
So if
the
any
homecoming
council
game.
wants to run a booth, or we're also going to have, I said we'll bring our new dunk tank to the, to
Am I
the.
gonna bring them both?
You can bring them both.
Who would they contact if they wanted to help out with that?
Megan Moore. Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to that game.
Can I interrupt real quick? Counselor Davis, we'll need your mic on, please. I could barely hear you, which means the audience couldn't. Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll move to item 8, public hearings. We have a presentation first.
Mayor, I'm going to take this opportunity to recuse myself from items 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, and 13.1. And I'll hang out back here if it's okay with you.
I guess there's not much seating in the audience today. After.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Tim Swan, Community Development Director representing the Planning Department. So, this presentation is regarding General Plan Amendment and Zoning Amendment 20-1. A application was received on behalf of Huntley LLC to change zoning from land use from medium density residential to high density residential and planned development residential to multifamily residential. The subject property is located just south of Indigo Ridge, north of 20th. If you could see and take a look at the land use map here, and a closer look shows that it is medium-density residential and parks open space. It's surrounded by areas like general business as well. Its current land use map allows for single-family homes, patios, duplexes, and so on and so forth. The proposal, what they're requesting is to allow single-family homes, apartments, condominiums, resorts, and townhomes. Don't forget the parks and open space down at the bottom as well. Taking a look at the zoning map and taking a closer look here. I did not bring my glasses. We can take a look at the current zoning, which is planned development residential. This area is to provide for the establishment of residential districts that do not conform with the size, density, shape, and location of conventional detached housing. That's the current zoning that is in place. I'm going to go through some allowed uses. You can take a look at our use table here. Some uses that are allowed going down this list are cemeteries, daycares, group homes, some that are allowed with a conditional use permit or just outright permitted by right, churches, mortuaries, outlet malls. You have accessory buildings, bed and breakfasts, so on and so forth. The proposed zoning would allow the broadest range of multifamily residential development intended for locations that are of primary intensity, closer to areas of density. Taking a look at parks and open space, we can take a look at some area projections from the Comprehensive Plan 2006-2026. At the highest standard, we far exceed overall parks and open space. So at population projections, even throughout 2026, we would require we currently have and far exceed even current projections as 2026 in terms of population. In terms of the allowed uses for residential districts, for what's proposed, I'm going to go through some allowed uses as well. Some that would be permitted are childcare, duplexes, dwellings, multifamily dwellings, single-family attached dwellings, nursing homes, utility facilities, golf course, parking lots, parking structures. And you can take a look here at the development standards. As a summary of the project, you see a site plan here, and after public hearings and feedback from our Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as the feedback from the members of the public, comments that were received, the developer had modified their site plan to look a little bit different and more accommodating, that would address many of those concerns and comments there. Heights were changed. Open space was changed, densities were changed, so on and so forth. The developer can go into detail with that. But they were more fitting and more accommodating to what the comments were received. In conclusion, I'm referencing some of these studies here. The 2018 Comprehensive Housing Plan calls out a lack in certain type of housing, which is multi-unit development, specifically apartments. As a survey, more than half of the people surveyed, in addition to single-family homes, requested to see apartments built in Page here. Furthermore, specific needs that were called out, as you see, number one, affordable apartments with 2 to 3 bedroom options, 1 to 2 bedroom multi-unit available for both rent and for households interested in joining the ownership market. And finally, with the Page General Plan, goal number 1 is to enhance the existing residential sections of Page and to foster and maintain a variety of housing opportunities for all income levels and ages. The objective, number 1, is to review the city zoning and subdivision regulations and amend as necessary to reflect current and desired future residential growth and trends. Objective 2 is to target a variety of housing types to increase residents' choices and living accommodations. 3 is to encourage construction of affordable housing, including multifamily planned unit development and special needs housing. 6 is establish appropriate areas for multifamily development on the land use map plan. Below that, it calls out in the general plan that appropriate locations for high-density residential to include areas that can accommodate those facilities, your water, sewer, electric, et cetera. Below that is a map of the area zoomed in. Our findings were that the change to high-density residential will act as a buffer to that general business, as we saw in the land use map, and it would provide, at this point, an additional over 200 housing units to the city of Page. We had received many public comments, and we had received recommendations. We had a neighborhood meeting that was held. 2 comments were received. We had a public hearing, as well as a planning and zoning recommendation, which they did not recommend this project. All the comments that can be found, including the several that you received just before today, were received and passed along. So what we have here today, we have our city engineer present, we have the developer present, as well as his team here. At the end of the day, if it is the will of the council to progress this proposal, staff does recommend it. So if there's any questions, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm available, as well as the rest of the staff and the developer.
Jim, what did you say was E&Z's recommendation?
It was to not approve, a denial.
Thank you, Tim.
So we do have a presentation that is ready by the developer, if you may.
Council, Mayor, thank you for having me. I'm Adam Perillo with Kimley Horn and Associates. I've been working on this project since the beginning. I did the neighborhood meeting and I was at the planning meeting. We've taken all of the input that we've received and we've worked hard to find ways to make adjustments to the plan that we have before you to accommodate and respond to some of those. The site plan that is up on the screen right now is our current site plan. Some of the things that I'd like to point out on this site plan is we pulled some of the buildings and the amenity centers back from the west side of the project or the rim view of the project, creating larger amenity areas, park spaces for children to play, to respond to the open space that we are adjacent to. The buildings along the road, we also switched from 3-story buildings to 2-story buildings so that they're in keeping with the 2-story single-family homes directly across the street from them. This reduced the number of units, which reduced the number of cars, which reduced the traffic, which reduced the parking. Going into that a little bit, Navajo Drive. So Navajo Drive's ultimate built out in your plan accommodates 12,500 cars a day. As Navajo Drive is built today, 2 lanes and 2 parallel lanes, it accommodates 5,000 cars a day. That's what it is designed for. That's what is in the plan. Tube counts were done last week. There's 500 cars a day on that road.
You said 5,000.
5,000 cars a day.
500?
No, 500 cars were counted on the road. The
Its
road,
capacity
as it is designed right now,
5,000.
has a capacity of 5,000 cars a day.
So you can have up to 5,000 per day on that road, and it would be able to handle that. Whereas
Right.
right now, we only have 500 per day actually
It is
traveling.
built right
That's
now.
contradicting your first bullet point that says the capacity
That's
for
the
Navajo.
ultimate build-out of that road. It is designed in your long-term transportation vision to be a larger capacity road than it currently is built to.
Can I interject right there? We've looked at the master transportation plan as well. The way it's set up, it's supposed to be a collector, which can be either a 3 or 5 lane section with a capacity of 6,500 cars a day, would be that ultimate in our transportation plan,
So that's the ultimate build-out.
6,500 per
And
day.
right now, today, as it is functioning, as it's
5,000.
built, it's 5,000.
Yeah.
So the pavement out there right now can accommodate 5,000 cars a day. The trip counts that were done last week that y'all handed over to us, thank you very much, is 500 cars a day or what is on it. We have reduced the number of units in our project from 234 to 210. We've taken 24 units out of there. We did that by changing the height of the building for the 4 buildings along Indigo Ridge to 2-story buildings instead of 3-story buildings. 210 units generates 1,500 cars a day. So that's 2,040 cars a day. That's about 50%. That's less than 50% of that road's capacity. Now, with the construction of this project, XL lanes, decel lanes, radiuses, improvements may need to be done to the road. We'll do a full traffic study, and we will adhere to all of your design standards. If we need to do improvements off-site on public roads in order to meet the needs and the standards of the community, we will do that. Architecture. We want to complement the existing Phase 1 homes that are being built. We want to be context sensitive to the region. These are some pictures, some inspiration photos, some examples of the type of architecture that we want to do out there. We don't want to do hipped roofs, we want to do flat roofs. So when we say we're going to stick to a 2-story building or a 3-story building, it's not going to then have a hip roof on top of that. It stops at the top of 2 or 3 stories. 24-foot max along Indigo Ridge. So those 4 buildings along there will only be 2-story buildings, just like the houses across the street. And a reduction in units from 234 to 210. The views, we've heard that folks are concerned about the views. We took some pictures from our Phase 1 development of what you see when you look to the west, when you look towards this project. And because the site drops off, all you see is sky when you look to the west. And that's without any houses on those lots. Those lots are selling really quick. Houses are being built, 2-story houses are being built. So there really are no views for the folks that live in the existing subdivision to the west. You can further see that by this section that we cut through the site. The topo was done earlier this year. This is active topo. To the far right, you can see a 6-foot tall person. That's about where the furthest east road is in the existing subdivision. Then you see these 2 black lines. Those are 2-story houses. So you'll be able to see past the first 2-story house that you would be looking in that direction of. If you continue to work left on your page, you'll see the road. And you'll see the first building that we're proposing. That's a 2-story building. Again, we've dropped the height of that from a 3-story building to a 2-story building. So the houses that you see to the right are actually taller and higher because of the elevation of the ground than the building that we have proposed on Indigo Ridge. And then as you continue to work to your west, the buildings go down as the slope goes down. So they really, from the road, will be perceived as 2-story buildings because they're dropping because the elevation of the project drops. The line that I have going through the middle of this project represents where the site will be more than 8 feet below the grade of Indigo Ridge. So the 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings on the west side of that line will all be 8 feet lower. The first floor of that building will be below Indigo Ridge Boulevard. Now that's working off of 2% 400 feet back into the site. 2% is a very common slope going through parking lots and across buildings. City services. We reached out to the water department, the sewer department, the electrical department. We reached out to police. We reached out to fire. We heard back from nearly all of them. Water and sewer told us that there are no capacity or supply issues with this project. They did not foresee any problems with handling the waste from these units or supplying the water to these units. There may need to be some upgrades to water lines or sewer lines or pump stations. If those upgrades need to be made, we will make those upgrades. But the plant has capacity to handle the projects. I have an email on that. We reached out to fire and we reached out to police. We didn't hear anything back from fire. Police said that at this time they do not have enough information to comment on this project, but they also did not share any concerns that they had at face value of this project. Park and Recreation. So during the Planning Commission meeting, Park and Rec came and spoke, and they shared the master plan with us, and they talked about things happening in the area. We've added some information to our plan on how we're working with Park and Rec. I think one of the first things I'd like to point out is off-site, right? The rim trail happens to the west of us. The rim trail happens to the east of us. Lakeview Nature Park happens to the east of us off of our site. But also directly to the east of the project we're talking about right now is Phase 1 of Indigo Ridge, which has Indigo Ridge Park in it, which we have created with the creation of that project and is now part of the park system. So we're helping implement the Park and Rec master plan. With this project, we propose putting a trail between the condominium project to the north and the apartment project to the south. You can see that as a dotted line running horizontal through the project on that property line. We'll build a trail through there that connects the Rimview Trail that's existing to the west of our project, through our project, to the park that we've created for the community east of Indigo Ridge. And then that trail continues through that subdivision, through some open spaces that were made, and connects to the larger Lakeview Nature Park and Rimview Trail on the east side. We're also proposing a trailhead along our east boundary to the Rimview Trail. I'd also like to point out on this the increased amenity areas and green space in the southwest corner of our site and in the middle of the northern section of our site. We've pulled the buildings back from those areas. We've pulled the parking back from those areas. We've added playgrounds to those areas. There will be pools in those areas. There'll be amenity buildings and wash houses, so that there are plenty of facilities for the folks that live in those communities. That's all I have, unless you all have questions.
So the people in the Indigo Ridge area that's already developed would be able to use the pools and parks?
I think
or
that's,
just the people in the...
I can't answer that question. I'm going to leave that to Keith. Keith can answer that question for you.
Hi, I'm Keith Moran. I'm Commercial Director for Huntley. There would have to be an agreement between the existing Indigo Ridge subdivision and the new HOA for the proposed subdivision. But as long as that's put in place, there's no issue with residents from one subdivision using the facilities in the other.
Do you have an estimated price of what one of these would cost?
I've got that in my presentation. I can share that now, or wait till the presentation.
I can wait.
I have a question regarding the proposed rim trail, or the access to the trail following the green dots. On the far east side, are you suggesting that people access this through properties that are already there?
There is an easement that was required between two lots so that we had connectivity. I'm just pointing out that that connectivity that the city has asked for is there.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So the way that would happen is that would be a portion of their open space with a dedicated public easement across that portion. So it'd be dedicated open space on their project with a public trail easement dedicated across that so that the public will have access. So it'd just be like a trail through any other part of town, that the city would have the ability to go in and maintain it and do what they need as well. And the public would have a deeded right across there.
Okay. I do know these are concepts at this point, and nothing is set in stone. The center divide in the middle of the project.
Yes.
There has been, unfortunately, a lot of criminal activity in this area. It starts in one area and then it ends up here. I'm just looking at police access, if they're trying to, police and fire access, if they're trying to get to somebody, that's completely blocking off. There's no emergency access in this proposal.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Madam Councilwoman, as part of the site plan review process, we do include the public safety in terms of egress, ingress, in terms of emergency medical services. Secondary access is also a standard practice as well.
Okay. I'm done with my questions right now.
You have a timeline?
That's part of Keith's presentation as well. I don't want to spoil anything.
Let's get Keith up there.
Okay.
Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Please excuse me, I'm not a good public speaker, so excuse me if I stumble a little bit. I'm Keith Moran. I am the Commercial Director for Huntley and the wider Hollybrook Group. Hollybrook are the main shareholder of Huntley in the US. I'm responsible for the delivery of the master plan at Indigo Ridge. I'd just like to thank the City of Page residents, the Mayor, City Council and everyone else for allowing me to speak this evening. I obviously I watched the P&Z committee last week and I was very disappointed, but obviously I understand the reaction and the concerns of the community, and we are all very committed in Huntley to make sure that all of those concerns are adequately addressed for not only the community at Indigo Ridge, but also for the wider community in the city. I'll just give a very headlines on Huntley. We're a US-based company. We're owned by Hollybrook Group, who have operations in the UK, Ireland and Poland. We're privately owned and we have funding allocated for this phase of the project to commence work in the first quarter of next year. We broadly construct 700 units per year across the various jurisdictions, and to alleviate any concerns about experience, we've got over 30 years experience in planning, designing and building communities. The only way we can deliver communities in no matter what jurisdiction that we work in is by working with the communities. So we're here to listen to the concerns, both the very close residents but the needs for the wider community. I think Adam gave you a very headline view on this. We all know that we acquired the site in 2006. We built the various roads in the subdivision, including the connection to Highway 89 in 2007. Built the subdivision of Coyote Creek and Quail Court. Installed all the utilities and graded the 60 lots. For the period between 2007 and 2019, we sold 17 lots. I took responsibility for the project at the end of 2018, coming into 2019, to ensure that the vision that we originally had for the scheme is delivered. Since July, we have sold 8 lots, which represents almost 20% of the overall lots there for sale. We have literally just lodged plans to build 4 spec homes. They will be starting as soon as we have a building permit, which we're hoping to have in the next month or so. And again, we have allocated funds of over 1.5 million associated to commence that construction up there. And we have instructed a design team both on phase 2 and phase 3, including Potato Hill, to develop the overall master plan for the area. Our aim is in 2020, early 2020, to commence the construction of phase 2. I think there are a lot of misconceptions put forward at the last P&Z meeting, and some I can completely understand. And what we want to try and do is alleviate those concerns. The first one, which really has got to be number one, is that we're here to try and maximise profits, which just simply isn't the case. I came to Page at the end of 2018, and the first thing I was told was that there is a housing crisis in the city. We met with the city councils. I've met with the city council 3 or 4 times, prior to the submission of the general plan and the zoning resubmission. And again, all of the concerns were regarding housing and how we could assist in alleviating that problem. Again, the second point is that the perception is that we are going to get the change of zoning, and we're going to sell the land. That is just not on the agenda for us. We've got funds allocated, sitting there waiting to be drawn down, internal funds. We don't have to go to external sources. Our intention is to commence design immediately if the scheme is rezoned, and we anticipate in either January or February 2020, subject to design and permits. There are some general comments, just generally regarding poor road design and maintenance. All of the roads in Indigo Ridge, both Indigo Ridge Boulevard and the roads within the subdivision, are dedicated roads to the City of Page, which we constructed at the time to City of Page standards. And whilst we're responsible for the landscaping maintenance, which we have a contract in place for, we're not responsible for the maintenance or for the design of the roads. There were a couple of other comments regarding that the existing subdivision was always promised to have a pool and to be gated. The plat all the way back to 2006, the scheme has never been a gated community, and it's never had a pool. The only place a pool would go is in the public area, the public park. Again, it's just never been on the agenda. There were quite genuine and I think reasonable fingers pointed at us saying that we were a failed subdivision, and I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. We were unhappy with a lot of things. That's the reason I'm here. We've changed. Everyone who was involved in that subdivision is no longer involved in that subdivision. Since that point, we've added new impetus to the whole scheme, not only the existing subdivision, but obviously we can see what's happening on phase 2 and the design that we've instructed on phase 3. Again, there's some been recent comments both at the P&Z meeting and on social media about poor landscaping and maintenance. We spend on average between $12,000 and $14,000 a year on landscape maintenance. And at the moment, there is no HOA up there. All of that cost is paid for by Huntley. The existing residents do not pay anything for the landscaping. And again, I guess people haven't seen me. People think we don't care. Again, just to reaffirm our commitment, we've invested more than anyone else in this city in that area. We've invested $12 million plus to date. We've paid all of the HOA and management fees to date, which amount to over $200,000. Obviously, we've paid all our property taxes, again, over $400,000 over the period that we've been there. And more than anything else, we have a further 49 acres to develop in that area. We do not want to put something there that is going to diminish the value of our asset. We do not want that. We want something that is going to enhance our asset and enhance this city. So, the economics. Can Huntley deliver moderately priced homes that the majority of Page can afford? Well, some of this is fairly confidential commercial information, but I think it's so important that we convince the city and the residents and the citizens that we can deliver on our promises.
We can't see that chart. The chart is so small we can't see it.
I don't know if we can get a hard copy.
Is there any way we can enlarge that chart?
So, okay, so we've broadly invested, say, 12 million in the area. That works back to the allocation that would be apportioned for this parcel that we're talking about is just under 2.2 million. With the current plan of 210 units, actually, sorry, can we reduce it so that we can get the...
Is that bottom slider?
So, so as I say, the overall investment is 12 million today. Broadly, that means that the land value apportioned to phase 2 is just under 2.2 million. Based upon what we've then tried to do is show just a broad, typical cost of delivering a 2-bed and a 3-bed unit. So you can see there that we've apportioned the land across cost 210 units, which gives a land cost per unit of just over 10,000. We've got some rezoning fees. Adam isn't cheap, unfortunately, so we've got some fees there. Then the general design fees for the overall construction at just over 11,500 a unit, and then we've got the hard construction costs. And these hard construction costs are tested. We have engaged a contractor. We're well along the way with developing budgets, and these show that a 2-bed, 2-bathroom unit would have a hard construction cost of 160,000. Again, then we've put some budget figures against permits and fees of 3,000, sales costs of 15,000. We've put a financing figure in there, and then we've got a margin for the delivery of the unit. That gives us the very, very crude numbers for both the 2 and the 3-bed units at just under 230,000 for a 2-bed and just over 255,000 for a 3-bed unit. Those numbers mean that these units are affordable for over 60% of the households in Page. The mean household income in Page is 60,000. There's actually a very significant number of people who earn a lot more than that. Whether they're our market for this, probably not. But we are anticipating monthly apartment rental costs at 1,300 for a 2-bed and 1,500 for a 3-bed. So we appreciate this isn't entry level, but this is, in our mind, young professionals who need the housing to allow this city to grow. So I suppose I just want to sum up really everything that I've said is that we are here to do the best for Indigo Ridge and the wider Pager community. We've invested 12 million so far, and we've got funding for a further 7.5, both in phase 1 and phase 2, and that is to be deployed in the next 3 to 6 months. We're here to build good quality homes that the City of Page deserves, and our homes will be affordable for over 60% of the households. Thank you very much.
I have a question. Out of all the projects that Huntley has done, what is the percentage that have been built for VRBO?
So this is our main project in the US. So generally our business is in Europe. So we don't build products specifically for VRBO.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we can open the public hearing now. with the motion.
Move to open the public hearing.
A motion and a second.
Yes. Done.
To open the public hearing for a general plan amendment for parcels 801-18-065 and 801-18-066 to change the land use category from medium-density residential and park open space to high-density residential. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You still there, Mark?
Yes, aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, I have a list here. This is going to help out a lot. Mr. Carey? And if we could keep there's lots of people want to make comments here, so I want to give everyone a chance to speak. So if we could keep our comments to around 3 minutes.
My name is Brian Carey. I live at 1500 Westview Drive. I am a member of Page's Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. And just one correction on the earlier presentation. I did present at Planning and Zoning strictly as an individual, so it's not on behalf of the board. I'm interested in this proposal because it eliminates park and open space. It's currently designated in the general plan. And I want to point out a couple of inconsistencies with what the Community Development Director said and what is actually on the ground. The City of Page is not utilizing the area to the north as general business. In fact, they've put in their council-approved citywide parks management plan a large park in that area, so there is no general business to which this would provide a buffer. I also want to point out that the city's definition for in the city's own definition for high-density residential use, that should only be considered appropriate locations for HDR land uses generally include those areas of the community where planned public facilities such as water, sewer, parks, and streets are appropriately sized. Right now, the city has identified as part of their master plan a deficiency in parks in that section of the city. As it develops further with these proposals or others, this needs to be considered. The park master plan identifies a park for that area that's referred to as the Ridgeway Open Space Neighborhood Park. The sizing was not put into the plan, and as one of the action plans in the master plan, it says require the developer of the Indigo Ridge West Potato Hill area to provide a publicly accessible neighborhood or specialty park in their development, and or to develop the Ridgeway Drive open space as a public accessible neighborhood park, and require the park to be provided within that first phase of the development. Since this would add perhaps up to 500 people in the area, the time to consider this new park for that area is now as part of this process. And although I appreciate the changes that were made in the site plan, we're not even at site plan review, as has been pointed out. This change to high-density residential would not be appropriate without a park already in place. I do also appreciate the changes made by the developer to access the rim trail by the residents in an orderly fashion, it appears. But I point out that this Indigo Park that was displayed up here is not part of the city's park system and appears nowhere in the city's master plan. And if indeed that was platted as such, it was not made available to staff or the large part of the city that worked on this plan. So I would urge, as other developments are considered, or in this one, since it is the same landowner for Indigo Ridge, for Phase 2, for Potato Hill, and for a wedge to the northeast, that the city staff work consciously to make sure that this city gets a park it deserves at the expense of the developer to serve the 500 to 1,000 people that will be in that area. It's important. We've identified a deficiency, and the city has all the tools they need to correct it. Thank you.
Mr. Michael Woods.
Thanks, Brian.
Mr. Mayor and council and members of the audience, I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I spoke at the planning and zoning meeting the other night. I'd just like to reiterate 2 or 3 things. Number one is just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Where is your residence?
Oh, sorry, 1514 Rimview Drive. And my name is Michael Woods. I don't think I said that here. The interesting thing is, for the citizenry, something is done in the city, and we think statically that it's always the same, and it keeps moving. And so then something like this comes in, and you're all aware of those changes. But just a brief history, when the city, and I was on the council at that time, originally negotiated with the developer, that was a private gated community with a gate at the end where the stop sign is at the west end of Indigo Ridge, and the road that came up that comes up from the highway was to feed to the resort only, with no access to Navajo Drive. The visitors to that would go down to the highway, and so that street was designed for a small community development there, residential one. But by the time the sale happened, the gate was removed. It was open to the public, and so it's more what it is now. But I don't think there was improvements to make that happen. The other thing I'd point out is that the city is its own worst enemy, because to make money with the public land, we sell it for the highest and best use and want to make a profit. An quick example is the 9 motel sites next to the Park Service building on Highway 89 was set up to keep motels out of residential areas. To date, you've sold 4. You have 4 under construction, and private landowners have sold somewhere between, I'm not sure, between 8 and 12 units that could have been down there. If the city could have negotiated at a price that was affordable, we wouldn't have a Hyatt sitting in the middle of a residential neighborhood. The last thing is, the city keeps, we're using a quarter of our land available, and we keep building with, it's like turning, you're stirring something, you keep turning it to the middle rather than building out the edge. Affordable housing, high density at the edge of the community I don't think is in the best interest. It would be better served to be closer to the downtown area, because many times affordable housing people don't have the same availability to transportation. At the planning and zoning meeting, it also talked about almost no impact to the school system because the kids could walk, but that's only 3 grades out of 12, and so everybody there are going to go cross-feeding from everybody else in town that are bringing their kids down there, as the residents here go up to the middle school, high school, and the other elementary school. In addition, keep building toward the center. The city of Page has 2.5 times the density in its housing than the average for Arizona, and yet we're only using 25% of our land. There's a lot of areas, nobody remembers that there's 4 other parcels around the golf course that are available for development, but the developer went for the highest profit in putting it to the most lucrative ones, and then none of the rest of them are built, and I kind of see the same thing here. There's a lot of other opportunities, and as I said at the beginning, just because we can do it doesn't mean that we should do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tina Holman?
Tina Holman, 7 19th Avenue. I encourage you to deny the applicant's request both for an amendment to the general plan and for rezoning these 2 parcels. When these 2 parcels were sold, they were sold as planned development residential. The purpose of planned developments, as is spelled out in the zoning code that was in effect at the time these parcels were sold, is to preserve the special character of specific areas. As per ordinance 648-18, which was passed November of 18, it states that when considering a general plan amendment,
The amendment should constitute an overall improvement to the general plan and is not solely for the good or benefit of a particular landholder or developer. Additionally, you must consider the degree to which the proposed amendment will impact the community as a whole or a portion of the community specifically listed is adversely impacting existing uses due to increased traffic on existing systems. The proposed request to move from medium-density residential and parks open space to high-density residential would definitely have an adverse impact on the neighborhood and on existing systems. Based on the guidelines in our code, this request should not be approved. It is often said that the best predictor of future performance is past performance. With that in mind, I again urge you to deny the applicant's request to change this property from medium-density residential and parks open space to high-density residential. Also, what's your name again? Brian Carey brought up about the high-density residential. He neglected to complete that section that said, and where planned or existing land uses are compatible with high-density residential land uses. In that area, it was designed with a very meandering road and sidewalks, which is very nice for the people who are in that community in that area. It was not designed to have a minimum of 12 units per acre. That's overbuilding in a small area. Not advisable. Thank you.
Ms. Judy Boston?
I want to thank the council first for the opportunity to address you. This is such an emotional issue for me that I didn't really fully realize until I addressed P&Z on the 3rd when I found that I couldn't speak in complete sentences or finish one thought before.
I'm sorry to interrupt you again. Can you introduce yourself and?
Certainly. My name is Jody Boston, 2126 Coyote Creek Road. Anyway, so I had a problem earlier, but with notes, and you'll forgive me, please, if I read them to you. I hope to do a better job this time. I've lived in Page for 40 years. I welcome both the city's growth and the possibility of increasing the availability of housing for its residents. But the thought of that complex being built on that piece of property frightens me. The problem is the road and where it leads to a K-2 school being built, to a K-2 school, a school zone. Those are little kids, and it's already overrun with too many cars. Can you picture the impact of the number of cars coming from that complex and what that will have on that particular school zone? Even if only half of them coming or going from that complex, because that's the only road there is, even if only half of them turn left and go down the hill instead of up towards the school, can you see the potential danger presented to those children? For 4 years, I've watched little ones walking down the sidewalk alone, crossing at the crosswalk if they don't get confused and just dart across. That happens too. Some are with a parent walking across the street from a hurriedly parked car, hoping the traffic will let them cross. I've had cars pass me in a crosswalk. Now presented with even more cars that apparently 25-mile-per-hour signs on Indigo Ridge Drive and 15-mile-per-hour when children are present signs means nothing. That's all that little school needs now. I have a picture that I'd like you to see. I apologize, I only have one, but if you could pass it down. I don't know where to start it. Thank you. It's a picture of a car, wheels up, resting on its roof, and pointed in the opposite direction it was originally traveling when the driver lost control. It's not the first accident on that stretch of road. People are just going too fast, even before they hit the school zone, so much so that they can't always slow down. And it appears that